daily lives, that will change history, 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 that will change history. That will be the most beautiful day.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by tonight for our Ukraine War Report. First of the week for day 159 of the ongoing invasion in Ukraine. Current date is August 1st here in the States. It's currently the 2nd in Ukraine, as we have passed over midnight there. It's about 3 a.m. Ukraine time. So again, good morning to everybody in Ukraine. Good morning to everybody in Europe. We're going to start by getting everybody caught up on the primary headlines for about the past 12 to 24 hours. We'll also touch on a few things that occurred over the weekend just to get everybody caught up. And then, of course, we'll hop into our community aggregated news and reporting brought to us by our Intel analysts over on the Discord server. There's an invite link to the Discord server in the description below for anybody that would like to join that. And then we'll get into our open source reporting after the community aggregated reports from resources like liveuamap.com, which you see behind me on the screen, and amongst others. And then, of course, we'll cap everything off with a little bit of a Q&A session from the live chats from YouTube, Discord, and Twitch to end off the show. Without further ado, we're going to start with our primary headlines. We're going to get everybody filled in on kind of the key topics that have been occurring over the past 12 to 24 hours, but again, stretching back into the weekend as well. Before we do that, however, if you can, hit that like button. It's the best way to get the algorithm's attention. Share this stream if you like this content. It's the best way to get this information to the hands of more people. And subscribe if you haven't already, because it's the best way to get notified when new videos and streams go live, and it's the only way to join our live chat over on the YouTube live stream there. So without further ado, again, we'll kind of get into our primary headlines here. Again, the big story today is that Ukrainian grain has started to depart. Those food shipments have started to depart Ukrainian ports on the Black Sea. The Sierra Leone flagship, also known as the Razzoni, carrying 2,600 tons of corn, has left the port of Odessa, destined for Lebanon. It's the first departure since the start of the Russian invasion, according to Ukraine's infrastructure ministry. A quote directly from that report saying, "Ukraine, together with our partners, have taken another step today in preventing world hunger." Alexander Kurakov said that in a statement earlier today. That's Ukraine's infrastructure minister. Again, that statement came on Monday, Ukraine time. Kubrakov stressed that Ukraine had done everything to restore the ports and said the lifting of the blockade would give Ukraine's economy $1 billion in foreign exchange revenue. Russia has agreed to allow grain shipments to leave Ukraine and to not attack them in a deal signed on the 22nd of July in Istanbul. But less than 24 hours later, the veracity of the deal was cast into doubt when Russian forces struck the Odessa port. When questioned by Turkey's defense minister, Russia at first denied it was involved in the attack, but the next day it issued a statement saying it had struck a Ukrainian vessel carrying Western weapons that was in the port. Ukraine's authorities rejected Russia's explanation for the attack. The EU and NATO on Monday welcomed the departure of those grain shipments from Ukraine as, quote, a first step towards easing the food crisis caused by the Russian invasion. But an EU spokesperson, Peter Stano, said Brussels still expected the, quote, implementation of the whole deal and resumption of Ukrainian exports to the customers around the world. The Kremlin has said in a short statement that the news of the first ship carrying grain to leave Ukraine's port of Odessa is, quote, very positive. Meanwhile, the mayor of Mykolaiv has said an attack on medical facilities in the city today is, quote, nothing more than cynical terrorism by Russian troops. Alexander Sivinikevich, again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly there, that's a mouthful there, described the damage, saying, informing residents, for some time our emergency hospital will not be able to accept patients. Part of the hospital's main building was also destroyed. There, too, it is necessary to put everything in order. This is an ordinary hospital which every day received residents of the city, including victims of Russian shelling. Therefore, today's attack on this medical facility is nothing more than cynical terrorism by Russian troops. Again, for everybody that's just tuning in, we're just getting started with our primary headlines for the evening. Big shout out to everybody that's stopping by tonight and taking some time out of their evening to get filled in on what's going on in Ukraine. Ukrainian forces have recaptured more than 40 settlements in the key southern region of Kherson as Kiev looks to drive back Russian troops in a counteroffensive, the local governor said on Monday. Quote, today, 46 settlements have been deoccupied in the Kherson region, said Dmytro Butry, the head of the Ukrainian regional administration. He told national TV that it was early Monday evening, I believe. Butry added that the majority of the regained villages lie in the northern part of the region, while some others are located on its southern part, close to the Black Sea and the heavily bombarded Mykolaiv region. Moscow has blacklisted 39 Britons, including a Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, and former Prime Minister David Cameron. Russia's foreign ministry said the citizens listed included journalists, contribute to the hostile course of London aimed at the demonization of our country and its international isolation, in a statement from the Russian government earlier today. Meanwhile, Russia is moving large numbers of troops to Ukraine's southern region in preparation for a Ukrainian counteroffensive, which is expected to pick up pace there in the coming days, according to Ukraine's deputy head of military intelligence. Quote from that report saying, they are increasing their troop numbers, preparing for our counteroffensive in Ukraine's south, and perhaps preparing to launch an offensive of their own. The Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said Russia was relocating some of its troops from their positions in the east to the south in order to push towards Kherson, regional capital, as well as the Zaporizhzhia region. Hundreds of thousands of civilians have been urged to evacuate the frontline eastern Donetsk region, the scene of fierce clashes with the Russian military over recent weeks. More than 50,000 children are still in the region, according to local officials. Quote, they need to be evacuated. You cannot put them in mortal danger in the winter without heating, light, without the ability to keep them warm, Kiev's Ministry of Reintegration of Temporarily Occupied Territories said in a statement. Meanwhile, Russia claims 5 people were injured at a Ukrainian drone strike on its Black Sea Fleet headquarters, prompting officials to cancel festivities planned for Navy Day. Earlier this morning, Ukraine decided to spoil our Navy Day, said Mikhail Reznikovzoyev, the head of the local Russian administration in Sevastopol, Crimea. Quote, an unidentified object flew into the yard of the fleet headquarters, according to preliminary data. It was a drone. 5 people were injured in that drone crash or strike, depending on how they're reporting on it there. Russian shelling on Mykolaiv reportedly killed one of Ukraine's wealthiest men, Oleksiy Vetitersky, and his wife Rasa, headed to the grain production and export business Nebulon, which included a fleet of ships for sending grain abroad. A presidential advisor, Mikhailo Podolyak, said Vetitersky was specifically targeted and his death was, quote, not an accident, but a well-thought-out and organized premeditated murder. The International Committee of the Red Cross has not yet received permission to visit the building in Olenivka, where at least 50 prisoners, Ukrainian prisoners of war, were killed, it said on Sunday. Russia said it had invited experts from the UN and Red Cross to examine the deaths in the interest of conducting an objective investigation. Zelensky denounced the attack as, quote, a war crime. Meanwhile, 200 Russian Marines from the 810th Naval Infantry Brigade refused to return to the fight in southern regions of Ukraine, according to Ukraine's Defense Ministry Intelligence Directorate in a report that came over the weekend. Ukraine's harvest this year could be half its usual amount because of the Russian invasion. Zelensky claimed, quote, the Ukrainian harvest this year is under the threat to be twice less, the Ukrainian president said in comments likely to intensify fears of a global hunger crisis. Meanwhile, Britain will now require foreign companies holding UK property to identify their true owners as part of a crackdown on Russian oligarchs and corrupt elites laundering illicit wealth. The Register of Overseas Entities will seek to ensure criminals cannot hide behind secretive chains of shell companies or use property in Britain to hide dirty money, the business ministry said in a statement posted on Monday. Finishing up our primary headline topics this evening, the European Union has sent Ukraine $1 billion, or about 837 million pounds in financial aid to support its budget and help it tackle the financial consequences of the Russian invasion. The Ukrainian Prime Minister said in a statement on Monday. Denis Shamal wrote on Telegram messaging app saying the $1 billion is a part of a large package of support for Ukraine, totaling $9 billion total. The funds will help finance priority budgetary needs for the Ukrainians. Again, that about sums up our primary headline topics for this evening. Again, big shout out to everybody that's tuning in this evening for tonight's Ukraine War Report. We're now going to switch over to our community aggregated news from our intel analysts over on the Discord server. If you'd like to follow along with those, you can find an invite link in the description below where you can join the server. You can find these posts in the Situation Room channel over on the Discord server. Our first post tonight comes from Kayuka. This comes from Flash on Twitter. This has been confirmed. It says Biden signed a memorandum of military aid to Kiev for another $550 million. It includes 5,000 shells for 155 millimeter howitzers, M777, and new rockets for the HIMARS systems as well. Let's go ahead and get over to our pointer screen here so we can see these reports in a little bit more detail. Another post coming at us from Kayuka this evening shows satellite imagery from today indicates there's a massive fire at Lysychansk oil refinery in Russian-occupied part of Luhansk Oblast. This facility was recently captured by Russian invaders. You can see here on screen some of that satellite imagery which was posted here today, again for August 1st. You could see those fires there, and I bet we could probably see correlating data on our NASA firm's map. Next post here, again, coming from Kayuka. This comes from Euromaidan Press on Twitter. It says, Trump and Ukraine should have done a deal with Russian dictator to prevent the invasion. Quote, they could have given up Crimea, they could have done something with NATO, and you'd have a country, because I believe Putin wanted to make a deal, says ex-U.S. President Donald Trump. And another post here from Kayuka, coming from the Flash, says, subscribers report explosions in Novakovka. We are waiting for official information. I hope to get some more updates on that in the coming hours and days here for you. Next post here coming from Pyrotech, longtime poster on the Discord server. This comes from Ukrainian Weapons Tracker. It shows a Ukrainian Spectator M1 Recon UAV was shot down by Russian forces, presumably in the east of the country. You can see here on screen some debris from that recon drone being held up here by a Russian soldier. Another post here coming from Kayuka. This is from TPYXA on Twitter here. It says, near Fozzy Market, something is on fire in Odessa. Unsure if this was caused by a strike or just some kind of fire that broke out there. But here on screen, you can see some black plumes of smoke rising from that reported fire there in Odessa. Our next post here, again, coming from Kayuka. This comes from Flash. This shows a video of the flood on the streets of Melitopol after today's downpour. So in Melitopol, they are dealing with some flooding and some pretty inclement weather, as well as the ongoing war. So kind of a double whammy there for the residents of Melitopol, again, after today's downpour appeared. You can see some flooding and damage there. And a little bit of an update here, again coming from Kayuka. This talks a little bit about the shelling that happened over the weekend in Mykolaiv. Let's take a look here. It says over 70 buildings were damaged in Sunday's shelling of Mykolaiv. The police have recorded more than 70 houses in Mykolaiv damaged by the Russian shelling on July 31st. According to Ukraine The Forum, the National Police of Ukraine said this in a statement posted on its website. After yesterday's massive shelling of the regional center, the police documented 58 damaged private and 13 apartment buildings, private garages, educational institutions, private offices, a hotel, utility, and private enterprises and administrative buildings. There are dead and injured civilians from those strikes. In our last community aggregated post this evening, again coming from Kayuka, this is our daily Ministry of Defense from the UK intelligence update. So let's take a look at what the UK has assessed here on the ongoing situation in Ukraine. It says here, again, this is for the 1st of August 2022. It says, over the last 4 days, Russia has continued to attempt tactical assaults on the Bakhmut axis, northeast of Donetsk, only managing to make slow progress. As briefed by the Ukrainian authorities last week, Russia is likely reallocating a significant number of its forces from the northern Donbass sector to southern Ukraine. Russia is also probably adjusting the operational design of its Donbass offensive after failing to make a decisive operational breakthrough under the plan it had been following since around April. It has likely identified its Zaporizhia front as a vulnerable area in need of reinforcement. No doubt that is why they are sending more forces down to that region. Again, big shout out to everybody that posted reports in the Situation Room this evening. I know we don't always have time to go through them all, but if you'd like to take a look at those many dozens and dozens of reports that are posted over there every day, you can find them in the Situation Room on our Discord server. Link to that in the description below. We're now going to hop over here to our live UA map to go through some of the open source reports we have for about the past 12 hours. So I'm going to scroll down here to the 12-hour mark, and we will start here. Again, 12 hours ago, Minister of Defense of Ukraine says, third brother in the Longhand family, MLRS Mars 2 from Germany, has now officially arrived in Ukraine, and no doubt will be put to work very soon. 11 hours ago, Minister of Defense of Ukraine says 4 additional HIMARS have arrived in Ukraine. No doubt those will come in pretty handy for the Ukrainian forces. 11 hours ago, you could see a Russian drone was shot down in the Sumy region yesterday. You can see a picture here of that charred drone wreckage, and even some pictures of some, I believe, an air defense system taking down that drone in the area. I believe we have a video to show you as well, so we'll take a look at that. This comes from Telegram. I believe this is a video of the surface-to-air missile intercepting. Go ahead and get some audio here, and I can show you guys this video here. So you can see there what looked to be a surface-to-air missile launching and intercepting that drone. 10 hours ago here, phone calls between Zelensky and Macron lasted for 1.5 hours. That occurred today. 8 hours ago, UN chief warns humanity one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation. So this is probably one of the most stark reports we've had from the UN chief here since the war has began. Says, again, just to reiterate here, the UN chief warns humanity is one miscalculation away from total nuclear annihilation. So a pretty stark warning there coming from the UN chief. We'll keep an eye on those developments over the coming weeks here. From Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, says Russia is using a nuclear plant in Ukraine as a military base, and this poses a great danger. Again, I've talked about and discussed rumors that we've heard about this over the past few weeks. Basically, using that nuclear plant as a military base allows them to ensure that the Ukrainians can't strike it. If the Ukrainians strike it, it causes a big nuclear mess on Ukrainian territory, arguably. And again, the Russians could play that to their advantage there. again, we'll have to keep our eyes close, our eyes peeled, and keep a close eye on the situation there at that nuclear plant where the Russians have set up a command base there. Not sure if it's a kind of a forward operating base there, or if they're using it to store weapons and ammunition. 7 hours ago here, Secretary Blinken calls on Russia to live up to its nuclear arms control commitments, accusing Moscow, quote, of reckless, dangerous nuclear saber rattling as part of its war in Ukraine. No doubt that is true. We have heard many, many, many pieces of rhetoric coming from the Kremlin since the war has began, saying things like they're going to turn the West into radioactive ash. Amongst other things, we've heard reports reflected on Russian state media as well, talking about the nuclear option. Again, this is something we're going to have to pay close attention to over the coming weeks and months here. Blinken asks, what message does Russia's violation of Budapest Memorandum send to any country around the world that may think and needs to have nuclear weapons to protect, to defend, to deter aggression against its sovereignty and independence? He says it's the worst possible message. No doubt that is true as well. 7 hours ago, the U.S. has assessed that Ukraine did not attack a prison in Russian-occupied eastern region of Donetsk with American-made HIMARS rocket launchers last week, directly contradicting Russian claims, according to 2 U.S. officials. So we have a lot of geopolitical reports I see here tonight coming from Live UA Map. Another one here, 6 hours ago, Biden administration will authorize another $550 million in security assistance package to Ukraine today. Again, that come from National Security Councilman John Kirby from the White House there in the U.S. 5 hours ago, 2 civilians killed as Russian army shelled a bus in Kherson region. 5 were wounded, hospitalized to Kryvyi. You can see where those strikes occurred there, not too far from Russian-held territory. 4 hours ago, explosions were reported in Kadiivka. You can see where that was located. Again, that's on Russian-held territory where those strikes occurred. 4 hours ago, explosions were reported in Kherson as well. So conflict is heating up there in Kherson. Some strikes have occurred over the past 4 or 5 hours here in that region. Little Dickens, too, in the live chat here sounds off. He says, the reports say they are storing munitions in that plant, and I wouldn't put it past the Russians. Yeah, I mean, from their perspective, that's a smart strategic move to do that because they know the Ukrainians aren't just going to strike that nuclear plant. It would be a disaster of international proportions if that were to occur. It's the same reason why the Zaporizhia nuclear battle, the battle over the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, and the battle over the Chernobyl nuclear plant were such a hot topic in the media, is because if something goes wrong there, it could be a disaster of epic proportions. So the Russians know this. They know the Ukrainians aren't going to directly strike those targets, those nuclear plants. So they can basically store whatever they want there without consequences. I'd argue we might see more of that as the war goes on. Them storing munitions, storing weapons, even setting up forward operating bases at some of these nuclear sites in Ukraine to avoid attacks from the Ukrainians. 3 hours ago, Bakhmut city is under heavy Russian shelling. Again, this is as of 3 hours ago. We have a video here to show you as well from that shelling occurring. You can hear sounds here of those shells exploding on target in Bakhmut. Three hours ago, the U.S. Defense Secretary says the security assistance to Ukraine continues, this time in the form of a $550 million package, as we reported on earlier, including tens of thousands of rounds of artillery ammunition. It says here, I'll read you some of this. Capabilities of this package include equipment for the Ukrainians are using effectively to defend their country, 75,000 rounds of 155mm artillery ammunition, and additional ammunition for a high-mobility artillery rocket system, also known as the HIMARS there. To meet its evolving battlefield requirements, the United States will continue to work with its allies and partners to provide Ukraine with key capabilities. It says here, 3 hours ago, reports of explosions in Novakovka as well. So again, quite a bit of activity on the southern front today, as the Ukrainians and the Russians continue to play that game of cat and mouse in the region. The Ukrainians looking to launch a counteroffensive, and the Russians looking to shore up their defenses in some of this occupied territory. That about sums up our open source reports for this evening. We'll cap everything off with a little bit of a Q&A session in the live chats. If you guys have any questions or comments about the ongoing war, you can post them in the live chat now, and I'll read off a few of your comments and questions here. If you haven't already, guys, hit that like button. Best way to get this stream out into the hands of more people. You got to get the algorithms' attention, as we do have to cater to the algorithms in today's day and age. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Best way to get notified when new videos and streams go live. Steve Gregory, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Says, Nemico, what's your prediction about the length of this melee now? If you're speaking to just how long this current fight is going to continue, it could last into the winter. A lot of analysts expect that it will last until the winter, well into the winter possibly. However, the Ukrainians don't want that. The Ukrainians want to end this conflict well before the winter, because they know if they don't, the Russians will be able to dig into positions, and it'll make launching future counteroffensives to retake some of this occupied territory a lot harder. Hugo, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Says they need the coordinates to the quickly marked in Makivka, aim the HIMARS there, eliminate the Z hangout. I wasn't aware of the quickly marked in Makivka being a Z hangout. That's interesting, though. Yeah, the HIMARS would probably be the tool for the job there, I would expect. Speedy Squirrel, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. As always, nice to see you. Catlinberg, thank you so much for stopping by this evening. Mike Berry says, did some pork loin on the barbecue. That sounds pretty delicious there, Mike Berry. I hope that pork loin turns out quite well. Stephen Gregory asks, where you been? I took off a few days last week. Was dealing with some health issues there. Amongst other things, been pretty busy with work as well. But we're back here again this week, and I'm going to try to keep the reports consistent over this week. We might move the time slot up a little earlier, depending on what I got going on this week. But if you do miss out on the reports, you can always find them uploaded to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Nemico Network. Doom Pie coming in clutch with our weather forecast for Kiev, the capital city of Ukraine, as usual. Thank you, Doom Pie. Says, 400, 21 degrees centigrade, cloudy, southwest, 6-kilometer winds. Sunrise 0524, sunset 2043. Rain is coming later tonight / into the tomorrow, into the day. Well, I hope the rain there slows down that Russian offensive and waters the Ukrainian crops. Hopefully their harvests will be plentiful this year. Catlinberg says, Nemico, do you think HIMARS, etc., are accurate to safely hit stuff hiding near the nuclear power plants? Well, the risk is if they try to do that and it causes an ammunition cook-off, like if they're storing ammo there, if they're storing munitions like bombs, etc., explosives, and they send in one of those HIMARS rockets and it happens to strike one of those caches of munitions, it could cause a chain reaction. It'd be far too dangerous to send anything near those nuclear plants. What we could see, however, is like a squad of Ukrainian forces, like Ukrainian special forces, possibly moving in there to take the plant back. That's possible. They could move in there with like explosive charges and take out certain things. That could be a possibility. However, again, I'm not a military strategist or expert by any stretch of the imagination, but that could be what we see there occur, as they, again, they can't just reach out with those MLRS and those HIMARS. It'd be far too dangerous. Kender, thank you so much for tuning in. Says, oh my God, I missed the whole report. Well, don't worry, Kender. You can always rewind it, or you can always find it uploaded to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Nemico Network. I saw somebody ask a question there. Oh, RM Red, thank you so much for tuning in. Says, what's going on in Kosovo? So yeah, I've heard a lot of reports of some activity between Serbia and Kosovo. the past few days. I hope to have some more information on that in tomorrow's report. I've been getting some information together to bring you guys a complete report on what's going on in that region, so I didn't want to touch on that this evening until I had more information. Kender says I will watch it at work tomorrow. Well, Kender, I hope you enjoy the report. I'll have it uploaded for you. Right after this report is done live, I will get that uploaded to the YouTube channel. If you guys haven't already, again, hit that like button. Best way to get the algorithm's attention. Helps the stream out a lot. Share the stream if you like this content. Best way to get the information out into the hands of more people. We'll be back here again tomorrow at around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll try to announce ahead of time when we're going to be going live with tomorrow night's report. I hope to do a little bit of catch-up with tomorrow's report if I got time. Dirk Clavis-Spieler says Nemico Network, the UN, U.S., and other governments warn that this will be a disaster for the world if it turns nuclear. If they are worried, why not stop sending aid to Ukraine and end the threat? Well, arguably, Dur, that would be even a worse decision. They've said before, if we don't keep the pressure up on Russia, they will take what they want, and then it's possible that they will continue to move into other countries, other Baltic nations, Lithuania possibly. Other countries could be, on the target list next if they're allowed to do what they are doing in Ukraine. As Hammerjam says, a really good point here. He says 98% accuracy is too low to attack anywhere near a spicy power plant. That's very true. Very true. It's just too risky. It would cause a huge disaster if that nuclear plant was to be struck. Mike Berry asks, Nemico, could this go into next spring? As I've said multiple times, yes, it's possible. We could be seeing this war continue for years. NATO has said that. U.S. officials have said that it's possible. That's why we're sending them so much aid, is because they need stockpiles of munition to last them for a while. I saw a report actually earlier this week that talked about the UK has sent so much munitions over to Ukraine that in the possibility that they get into a confrontation with Russia, that their ammunition would run out, that the UK's ammunition might run out in as little as 2 weeks. That's how much has been sent over to Ukraine. They want to keep them shored up. They want to keep those munition supplies shored up as long as possible. It's possible that this could go, as Stephen Gregory says, well into 2023. It would make it arguably worse for the Ukrainians if the Russians were allowed time to dig in over the winter. So they're trying to, again, launch these counteroffensives now in the late summer into the fall before the winter hits, hopefully gain some ground back, push the Russians back. Again, it remains to be seen if they're going to be able to pull that off. Again, guys, new reports tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 3 a.m. Ukraine time. Big shout out to everybody that posted in the Situation Room tonight. Big shout out to everybody that tuned in this evening. Thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day to get informed on what's going on in Ukraine. Katlenberg says Moldova. Yep, that's another possibility as well. Moldova is always on the table. The Baltic states. The list goes on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, that about sums up tonight's report. Again, for those that missed it, you can find it uploaded to the YouTube channel after this is done live. If you're looking for any of the links to anything, you can find that in the description. If you can't find it there, you can find it over on the Discord server. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, you are watching Nemico Network.
Something that will change our daily lives, that will change history, 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 that will change history. That will be the most beautiful day.